Hello, I'm Ric Vatner from ESTV and we're talking politics. And today I'm wearing my scarf in sympathy for Julia Gillard, because I know she's feeling a little bit out in the cold and probably a bit battle bruised as well. And does she deserve it? Well, frankly, yes. I'm afraid she got herself into this position, but I can understand how she did it. Let me explain. I predicted in our last report that Julia Gillard was a doer, that she would get in there and make things happen, and boy, didn't she make short work of the miners. Now maybe the solution wasn't pretty, but by the time she got to it, there was no pretty solution to be had. But she fixed the problem and was in a position to move on to the next one, and I give her full credit for that. So after Julia had dealt with the miners, she then moved on to the next issue. She had two that she needed to look at. One, global warming, and the second one, the refugee problem. And yes, I use the word refugees. These are not boat people, these are not asylum seekers. These are people who are either running to save their life and the lives of their children, or people who are trying to get just a little bit of an opportunity to build a life rather than to have to live in squalor for the rest of their life. But I'll come back to that issue in a moment. Julia chose to deal with the refugee issue, and her big mistake was that she allowed Tony Abbott to set the agenda. Now, I don't think that guy knows what he's talking about, and he certainly doesn't have the best interests of Australia or of the refugees or of anyone else but himself and potentially the Liberal Party at heart. He has only one aim. His aim is to make Julia Gillard and the Labour Party look bad so that when it comes to the election, people will vote for him because they feel that the Labour government is letting them down. And unfortunately, on this issue, Julia Gillard is letting him get away with it. You know, a disciple of Confucius once asked him what type of person would he choose to lead a country. And this is what Confucius said. The man who was ready to beard a tiger or rush a river without caring whether he lived or died, that sort of man I should not take. I should certainly take someone who approached difficulties with due caution and who preferred to succeed by strategy. Julia, don't let Tony Abbott set the agenda. This is not a problem that's going to be solved overnight. This is not a problem of stopping the boats coming to Australia. You know, I would have laughed if I didn't think it was so serious when I heard the Liberal Party saying that they were the only party in Australia with a solution to the boat problem. What they're going to do is send the Navy out to turn the boats back. Maybe we should change his name to Canute, the man who thought he could hold the waves back. You know, even if we could actually meet all those boats, most of them set out from Indonesia, not from Sri Lanka, not from Afghanistan. So when he says send them back, he's talking about sending them back to Indonesia. But I've got news for you, Tony Abbott. Indonesia doesn't want them. Indonesia can't put up with them all. Indonesia can't support them. And Indonesia is sitting there looking at us and saying, hey, what makes you guys so special? How come we have to take all the refugees and you sit over there in your pristine country and you think you don't have to take any of them? Secondly, most of these boats are not seaworthy when they leave Indonesia. And if they get to Australia and they can still stay afloat, the first thing they do when they see an Australian naval ship is sabotage the boat. They're not going back to Indonesia, Tony Abbott, and they won't go back to Indonesia when you're Prime Minister either. This is not a problem that we can solve on the seas. This is a problem that is going to take time. And the place that it's going to be solved is by going to their country and fixing the issues, or at least helping them fix the issues that they have. Why are people running away from Sri Lanka? They're running away because, as Tamils, they're persecuted. Because if you're a father and you have children, you don't want to see them being abused, having no education, having no future whatsoever in the country in which they were born. They just want the chance to live in their own country as equal citizens. They don't want to take their family on the high seas in an unseaworthy boat to risk their lives coming to a country that they probably never heard of before. It's not that they woke up one morning and said, I want to live in Australia. No, they want to live in Sri Lanka. And what we've got to do is work with their government to help them achieve that goal. Why are people running away from Afghanistan? Well, I don't have to tell you why they're running away from Afghanistan. You know, we'd run away from Afghanistan if we could, but we're locked in. The fact is that most of the people that leave Afghanistan are Hazaras, and they were being persecuted and killed and murdered, and their families were having terrible, or were experiencing terrible abuse. And if somehow that happened here in Australia, imagine, just for a second, that one day we get a politician that takes over and becomes a dictator. Maybe the army and the politicians work together, and suddenly, if you're a Catholic, or if you're bald, or for whatever reason, you're out. And because your children are your children, they're kicked out of school, they're abused in the street, they're murdered, they're raped. Would you stay here, or would you get on a boat and take your children to somewhere where you felt they might be safer? To be honest, I can't ever see Australia going down that route. But between you and me, I think it could happen in a country like America. I think it could happen in some of the European countries. And in fact, we've already seen what happened in Yugoslavia. I mean, it deteriorated into an inhuman catastrophe. And these things that I'm talking about, and much worse, happened in Europe not that long ago. And if you were there, you would have left too. So Julia Gillard, don't let Tony Abbott set this agenda. You are a strong leader. Lead. Take us where we should go, not where Tony Abbott points. This is Ric Vatner from ESTV. Looking forward to seeing you next week.